Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call the full board meeting to order. First item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item number 3, invocation. Commissioner Sauger.
Okay, we bow our heads in prayer to thank God for the many gifts and talents of each commissioner. We thank you for the privilege of serving the fine people of Macomb County. We ask your blessing on our deliberations today. May our decisions be inspired by genuine concern and fairness for those who elected us as their stewards. May your spirit of wisdom be our guiding light. We ask this through Jesus Christ, our brother. Amen.
Amen. Item number 4, adoption of the agenda. I'd like a motion to adopt removing item 10A. The Blue Water Conservation District is coming on the 17th of October. Have a motion by Commissioner Kraft, support by Commissioner Hall. Please vote. Motion passes. Item number 5. We voted.
Yes.
Motion still passes. Item number 5, approval of minutes dated August 15, 2019 and September 11, 2019. Would someone like to make that in their entirety? Commissioner Romano, support. Commissioner Sauger. Please vote. Item passes. Item number 6, public hearing. We have a public hearing on the annexation of Ray Township property into the Village of Romeo. I need a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Commissioner Carabelli, support by Commissioner Kraft. Our hearing is open. It's open to the public. If you have comments on this, Mr. Krisha, if you wouldn't mind, maybe just kind of give us the quick rundown of this, and then we'll let the public speak to it. Can you turn the mic on, please? See it push the button in the middle on the base. Thank you.
This is a petition by the Village of Romeo to annex 5 parcels of property in Ray Township. Basically, it's like a finger sticking out at the bottom right corner of the township. There's maps that were distributed earlier today. And what happened is the owners of these parcels wish for the parcels to be developed, and to do that, they need utilities provided by the village that are not available by the township. So one of the ways they can do that is through annexation. Then they also become members, they become a part of the Romeo Village community, and they have access to the Romeo Village's services. The owners petitioned the village passed the resolution, and that's before you today. Under the law, there were required to be certain notices. Those notices were complied with by the clerk of the Village of Romeo, and you are required to hold a public hearing under MCL 74.6. The statute provides very little guidelines, so it's largely within your discretion, but I would recommend that you allow people to speak for a reasonable amount of time, either for or against the petition, and at the conclusion of that, you would then decide whether to grant or deny the petition. There's really no room in the statute for anything else, so it will be an up or down at the end. If you wanted to look at it further, you would deny it, and then we would have to go through the process again.
Okay.
So,
thank you. Then we're going to allow 5 minutes per speaker that falls in line with public participation, and if we need more, we'll have it at the board's discretion, the chair's discretion. So, do you have any members of the public wishing to speak? Please give us your name and city.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Larry Scott. I'm an attorney, law firm of O'Reilly Rancilio, 12900 Hall Road in Sterling Heights. I'm here today on behalf of Mr. Zachowski, who was the original petitioner to the Village of Romeo for this annexation. And as Mr. Krisha has explained to you, this now involves 5 parcels of property on the corner of Powell Road and 32 Mile Road. The original petition that we filed was for 7 parcels because Mr. Zachowski owned a parcel of land to the east. There's 5 parcels that we have now. There's a cemetery, which I'm sure you're all going to hear about. And then there was a parcel further attached, but contiguous, but further to the east. In the interim, that parcel's been sold to the state and for use for part of the airport. The cemetery, when we originally approached Ray Township, they were all for it. Everybody said, yeah, we're good for it. That we included them in our original petition, and everything was fine. It got down to figuring out who was going to maintain the cemetery. And Ray Township wanted to transfer the maintenance obligation to either the Village of Romeo, who doesn't want it, or the petitioner, who doesn't want it. We don't need to annex that parcel because we're not contiguous to anything. The 5 parcels that are before you today are contiguous, and they're all in a group, which again, I have this drawing and I have a couple of other bigger drawings if you all want to see it. But we're here because we want to develop the property. We understand that the property is currently zoned residential. We understand that when the Village of Romeo, if it does get annexed, will go into the village as single family. And from there, it would have to go through the ordinary development process. But the Village of Romeo has utilities. They have sewer and water capabilities that we can't get from Ray Township. So we're asking that you allow the Village of Romeo to annex this property, and so that we can go forward with certain development plans that we have for the property. Right now, there's a couple of houses on it, and it sits on the north side of 32 Mile Road. I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone may have if they do, but that's really what we're here for.
Mr. Creasy, are we allowed to ask questions in the public hearing like this? I know in public participation, we're not. This is very similar. I just want to make sure that we're allowed to actually have a back and forth with the,
Yes, as I indicated, there are no rules in the statute. You can have reasonable rules, and it's not unusual for members of the board to ask questions regarding the proposal before them during a public hearing.
Right. That being said, I have Commissioner Drollet on the,
I think it's clear, but these are all, every parcel, the owner would like this to be transferred, right?
Correct.
So there's no parcels where it's contested
We
with the
have
owner?
not carved out anything. It's 5 contiguous parcels from the corner of 32 Mile Road down Powell Road, all the way down to where the cemetery is at. It stops there.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Duje.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question, is this, are these parcels a part of a plat?
No. They're meets and bounds descriptions. There's a total of 17.9 acres, but they're all descriptions. For example, this is one, here's one, here's one. There's a small one up here and then one back here.
Okay, so that's just open land?
Correct.
Are you planning on platting it?
I'm not sure that we've platted. That's become a very difficult process. But, you know, the ultimate goal is to do some assisted living there.
All right.
And so we don't know that we need to plat it in order to develop it that way.
Well, it's either plat or site condo
It
or
could be a
whatever
site
development. Are there any R1A, R1B requirements in that area if it does get platted?
I'm not sure.
All right.
I'm not sure.
I'd be interested in seeing how this development works out. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Romano?
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Counselor. Mine's a simple question, then I have a few after that. So why are you before us? I mean, why hasn't this been worked out between Romeo and Ray, and why are you before us?
It's,
First of all, it's the Village of Romeo's petition.
Right?
Okay, we petitioned the Village of Romeo, they passed a resolution, and now this is their petition to you. Okay, we've had discussions with Ray. We can't come to an agreement with Ray because we keep bumping our heads against the maintenance of this cemetery going forward. And annexation does not change ownership. It doesn't change ownership in one bit. And the Ray Township owns this. They'll continue to own it if they were to get annexed into the village. This is all about, we want you to take over the obligation to maintain this cemetery. And the owner doesn't want to do it, and the township, and the Village of Romeo doesn't want to do it, and quite frankly, they shouldn't have to. We're not even going on the other side of them anymore. They're not part of a contiguous group. We redid this petition and came in with these 5 parcels and stopped here.
Anybody come up with the cost to maintain the cemetery?
I've not been provided with that.
Perhaps we'll hear from the other end. Okay, that's all I have. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Carabelli?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, sir. A couple of questions for you.
I'll try.
Did this first come through a request because it was continuous with the cemetery included, and it was another parcel on the other side in the very beginning?
Yes.
So in the very beginning, this was a request to take the entire, I would say landlocked, but from 32 Mile Road to the north.
Our initial application included the cemetery, because Ray said yes, and it included a parcel that Mr. Zakowski owned to the east.
Okay.
While
So
this is
at-
pending, that parcel gets sold.
Okay,
and the
so again, I just wanted the yes or no.
I'm sorry.
So at first, it was, everything was continuous.
Yes, sir.
The cemetery was included in that ask.
Yes, sir.
And now that property got sold to the far side, so now you don't have to have the cemetery involved to go with the rest of it,
Correct.
which was probably Romeo's wish to begin with.
Correct. I believe so. I don't want to speak for them, but
So
they're here, and
I'm
I
just at
believe so.
10,000 feet looking down that this was changed to make the deal go through with Romeo. With that said, the actual ownership on the deeds, not first right of refusals or anything else, this property is all parcels, all those homes, 100% owned by one individual?
No, Mr. Zakowski, his daughter, and then him again in the form of a corporation, but yes, he controls everything.
Okay, let me, and I'm not an attorney. Frank Krisha, if you can come up for a minute. Sir, I guess my question is, this isn't something where you put money down on property and you hold it in case all this stuff goes through at the very end? Do you understand what I'm trying to explain?
I don't think this is that type of situation. I believe these properties were owned before this petition came up, and they're owned by the petitioners.
Mr. Zakowski's lived in that house his whole life.
Okay,
His mother's house is there.
And I appreciate, I was talking about all the other properties that were there as well.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, that's all I have at this time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Commissioner Kleinfeld?
So I'm looking at the map, and I'm looking with his help with some Google Earth. So if the cemetery isn't next to it, then where is the cemetery on this map?
It is.
Here, if you would, the cemetery is right here.
Right, aren't you annexing everything next to that?
No, this is the piece that was sold. Here's the cemetery. Here's one piece, here's a piece, here's a piece. There's a real tiny piece here, and here's a piece.
So when you said here's one piece, that was the first piece,
Right
right?
here. See where the outline in red is?
Yeah, how is that not next to the cemetery?
It is. There's no question. It bumps right up against the cemetery.
Okay,
This is a
I thought you
cemetery.
said it didn't. Okay,
No, no.
it does.
It does.
All right,
This
thank
is the
you.
whole parcel that we want to have annexed. The cemetery's here, and the parcel that was originally included in the application is out here.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Okay, I don't have any other speakers or questions for you, Mr. Scott, so if we could move on to any other
Sure.
members of
Thank
the
you for your
public.
time.
Thank you for your time, yep. Any other members of the public wishing to speak on this, please come up. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Mark Clark. I'm the attorney for the Village of Romeo, the petitioner in this matter. I just want to mention a couple of things, and I appreciate the commission's consideration of this matter. As Mr. Krisha mentioned, the process and the substance of this is governed by Michigan law. It's MCL 74.6, part of the General Law Village Act. The Village of Romeo is a general law village. The village did not initiate this process. Mr. Zahowski, the property owner, came to the village and asked if his property could be annexed into the village. Because the village is a general law village, we don't have the common annexation procedure. It's technically called a boundary adjustment. We come before the Board of Commissioners, and the commissioners decide whether to adjust the boundaries of the village to include this particular piece. So I just want to be clear that this was initiated by the property owner. It was not the village trying to take property out of Ray Township. And this was not done lightly. Mr. Zahowski first came to the village council in August of 2018. The final petition, which you have before you, was not approved by the village council until July of 2019. And it does contain the roughly rectangularly shaped piece of property that is included in the legal descriptions that you have. The village looks at this not as, let's take property from an adjoining municipality. We look at it as, we have these resources, we have sewer, we have water, we have a police department, and here is an adjoining property owner that is requesting annexation to the village to develop, in part, the north end of the county. I don't know if you've been out to Romeo, you're always welcome. It's a beautiful, wonderful place. But if you go north on Powell Road and west into the village on 32, there's a significant industrial area there. Ford Motor Company builds engines and a substantial plant there. There are a number of other small and medium-sized businesses within the village in this industrial area. And this would be, in my view, on behalf of the village, an appropriate addition to that industrial area to promote the further development of the north end of the county. And one thing that I think is important is, and I think Mr. Creasha touched on this and perhaps Mr. Scott, we're not talking about a change of ownership. There's been an issue regarding Ray Township and the cemetery. Even if the village brought in the cemetery, Ray Township or whomever owns that cemetery would continue to own it. The village would not acquire ownership. Just as if you approve this petition, Mr. Zahowski and those related to him will continue to own their property. The village will not acquire any ownership. This is not about ownership. It's simply about municipal jurisdiction. And if you grant the petition, the Ray Township will continue to receive its millage. If it has a special assessment, it would not receive that on this portion of the property. But the village itself presently lies within two townships, the Washington Township and Bruce Township. And we, as I'm a village resident as well as its attorney, we pay Washington Township taxes if you live south of 32 Mile Road. We pay Bruce Township taxes if you live on the north side of 32 Mile Road, in addition to the village taxes. So Ray Township is not going to lose its tax revenue, its general operating revenue, except if there is a special assessment, perhaps a library millage, I'm not sure. It may lose that, but it's not going to lose its general operating millage. It will continue to assess that property and to send Mr. Zahowski and those related to him those tax bills. And I'd be happy to answer any questions. The village president, Ms. Malzahn, is here. The village clerk, Ms. Trapp, is here. We feel we've met all the requirements. The petition is in order. The publication was done. We have an affidavit of publication. Everything's in order, and we would ask that you approve and adopt the petition.
So there are a few commissioners, but I have a quick question. Just
Sure.
based on, you said the ownership stays the same. So you're saying that even if they annexed the cemetery, Ray Township would still own the cemetery and then thus be still responsible for the maintenance of it?
That's correct.
Okay, I just wanted to make that
That's
clear.
correct. And it may be a cemetery association. I'm not
Okay.
sure if
Or
the township...
whomever would still own
Correct.
it and still be responsible, no matter what community it lied in.
That is correct.
Okay. Commissioner Kleinfeld, are you still on from last time, or is this new? Okay. Commissioner Romano.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. So, again, I want to get it clear in my head. So, who does own the cemetery?
I don't know. Either Ray Township or a cemetery association, and quite honestly, that's, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but it's no concern to the village about ownership, because the transfer, if you approve the petition, it does not change title to the property. This does not involve a transfer of title. It's simply, if approved, a transfer of municipal jurisdiction, wherein, in what municipality does the property lie? And if you approve the petition, it will lie in two municipalities, Ray Township and the Village of Romeo.
So my question again is, I think the dispute here is because of the cemetery. Am I correct?
You are, except to the village, there's no dispute. Ray Township did approach the village, asked the village to assume not only the jurisdiction of the property, if you will, but ownership and the responsibility for the maintenance. The village has no interest in that.
Who's doing it now, Counselor? Who's
Pardon me?
taking care of the cemetery now?
I have no idea. There are representatives from Ray Township. Hopefully, they can answer that. The village has its own cemetery presently, which it maintains, pays for, and supervises, administers. The village does not need another cemetery.
So if this base was rezoned industrial, because it looks like it's in an industrial area, naturally, there's going to be taxes, and there's going to be a lot of items given money-wise. Who's going to benefit from that?
Well, hopefully, a number of entities and people will benefit. Hopefully, the Village of Romeo, and Mr. Zahowski or whomever owns, if the commission approves the petition, would have to go through the rezoning process.
Right.
But ultimately, if it's rezoned industrial, I'm assuming assessments will change. Hopefully, they will go up. And whatever is built there would be similarly included in the assessments. And so I think the benefit would be the Village of Romeo, Ray Township, Macomb County, people who have jobs in the facility that's constructed there. I think there are potentially many beneficiaries.
Okay, and I understand what you're saying. I'm not trying to pinpoint or go either way. I'm just trying to figure this out. If it's industrial, you're coming up with sewer and water, they're annexing that to you. Again, I'm just asking, I would see the benefit to be Romeo.
Unquestionably, Romeo benefits, but Romeo would not be the sole beneficiary.
The biggest beneficiary.
Well, perhaps, but there's also, as anything, and I realize government's not necessarily a profit-making enterprise, but there's overhead as well. In other words, if the village extends sewer and water, which it has and it will, there'll be increased costs to the wastewater treatment plant, to the water, to the infrastructure, but would the village benefit by increased assessments? Hopefully so, and hopefully so would Macomb County, hopefully so would Ray Township.
Thank you, Counselor. That's
Thank you. Commissioner Leonetti.
No, actually, I withdraw. Mr. Commissioner
Thank you. Commissioner Carabelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So my understanding again, so you're saying the current property taxes that are paid now would continue to go to, if this was approved, continue to go to Ray Township?
Not all of them. Ray Township, I don't know what its general operating levy is now, if it's general, or townships can generally levy 1 mil. I don't know if it levies the whole mill, and again, there are representatives here, hopefully they can speak to that. But Ray Township would receive whatever millage it levies against the property, and the village levies a separate millage, which would be paid to the village. So Ray Township, it's possible it would lose, if it has a special assessment, that it would lose that, but its general operating, its general levy, it will not lose that, and in fact, it should be increased.
So with that said, any improvements to the property, if this went through, would then go to Romeo?
They would go to any of the taxing authorities, the Village of Romeo, Ray Township.
It wouldn't be Ray if it was approved. So if there's improvements on the property, would that tax then?
No, it would be to all of the taxing authorities. Whoever levies a tax would derive the benefit of the increased assessment.
Okay. Has anybody ever discussed, instead of annexing this property, of an interlocal agreement to do sewer and water?
There have been some discussions about that, not greatly, but that issue has been broached.
And I'm just trying to understand, because if it's the ability of not having the sewer and water, and there's an interlocal agreement, then why would we be here? I guess, why wasn't that?
Well, we may not be, but the question would be if an interlocal agreement could be negotiated and ultimately entered into, and is that possible? Sure. I just think annexation is the cleaner, more direct, more appropriate way to address the circumstances that are before the board this afternoon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner Sauger.
I'm just curious, you're telling me that nobody wants a cemetery, huh?
Well, I'm telling you, the village doesn't want the cemetery. I can't speak for others, but the village
Because in my
doesn't.
mind, I'm thinking, what if they want to expand?
I can just tell you, the village does not want the cemetery.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I don't have any other speakers or questions for you, so thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your consideration.
Next. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Please give us your name and...
I'm Bob Siebert. I'm the township attorney for Ray Township. This The entire cemetery issue is, quite frankly, a red herring. This is not about the cemetery. This is about, as the gentleman asked, why are we here and why do we need annexation? Let me give you this bit of background. My firm has represented virtually every municipality north of Chesterfield Township with the exception of the Village of Romeo for almost 40 years. I have never, in 40 years of municipal practice, ever been in an annexation proceeding. And that's because where you have a situation like this, the municipalities, Ray and the Village of Romeo, sit down and they work out a very simple intergovernmental agreement under the Urban Cooperation Act, and they get the problem solved. Despite what Mr. Clark indicated to you, there have been no negotiations between Ray Township and the Village of Romeo to extend this line. Ray Township is completely receptive to entering into an agreement. This water and sewer line that they are now seeking annexation or boundary change is less than 500 feet from this property. All they've got to do is extend the line 3 or 4 or 500 feet, and Mr. Zukowski has all the water he can drink and all the sewer he can use for his residential development. There is absolutely no reason whatsoever for annexation. If you go through your packet and you look at the minutes of the Romeo meetings and the resolutions, which are essentially a cut and paste of the minutes put into resolution format, I challenge you to find any rationale by which the village is now coming before you for annexation. There is a mention in their second amended petition for water and sewer, but that's never discussed at any meeting of the village council, the first meeting in July of 18 or the meeting in 2019. No mention of that at all. Mr. Scott, in his presentation, clearly did not indicate that he came to Romeo or that he came to Ray Township and asked for an intergovernmental agreement. We do those all day long. That's why the Urban Cooperation Act was enacted, to give municipalities the ability to solve these problems. Dragging that line 500 feet to Mr. Zukowski's property would give Romeo additional customers. They would get the charges and the rates that they charge all of the users of their system. They would maintain it, they would operate it, they would inspect it. It would be built according to their standards, and it would be as if this was another customer, which it would be, of the Village of Romeo. So when you go through this packet and you ask, why are we annexing this property, there's no support in any of the filings, either by the Village of Romeo or in the discussions that the Village of Romeo had at its 2 meetings. Had they simply come to us and asked us, I can go on the record right now as saying, if they came to our next Township Board meeting, the Township Board is going to approve the extension of the Village of Romeo water and sewer line to this parcel of property, and we're done.
Good. Thank you. We have Commissioner Romano.
I'm speaking for myself and not the entire board, but I think you guys need to go back to the drawing board. That's my personal opinion. Thank you.
Commissioner Drollet.
Thank you. Sir, Mr. Zukowski is the sole owner and his family members of these properties?
I have no idea what his interest is in them, but the village is apparently persuaded that he has sufficient title interest to have filed a petition with the village to get it this far. And we haven't done the title work on it.
Okay, so this property isn't owned by Romeo, it's not owned by Ray Township.
No.
It's owned by a property owner who's decided where he wants to be represented.
Well, it's not that simple. You don't simply change a boundary line because I decide that I want to live in the city of Grosse Pointe rather than Grosse Pointe Farms. There's got to be some rationale for it. And the rationale that they articulate, but is not in the record, is that this is about water and sewer. And Ray Township's position is, we can give you water and sewer. All you have to do is come in.
So the property right itself is not adequate rationale?
Pardon me?
The right of the property owner itself is not adequate rationale?
No, you've got to come in and you've got to give some factual basis for why you ought to change a municipal boundary line.
Why?
Then there would be no standards at all.
Sure, we could have standards. The property owner would make a determination when he or she owns a piece of property who they want to represent us, but which is contiguous.
I think you're oversimplifying the annexation process. There has to be a factual basis for it.
Yeah, the owner wants it.
I think that that's inadequate. If that's the basis of your decision, I think that's not based on competent material and substantial evidence on the record. It would be my view.
Thank you.
All right. I don't have any other questions for you. Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Mr. Siebert. Next, anybody else wishing to speak? Anybody else wishing to speak?
If I may, Mr. Chair, is the owner here? Does anybody know, is Mr. Zakowski here? I mean, could we hear from him if he wants to speak?
If you so choose, Mr. Zakowski, or you could come up and maybe give us a little bit of your thoughts on this, or maybe if someone might have a question for you, that would be fine.
Sure. Chester Zahowski, 15355, 32 Mile, Ray, Michigan, 48096. Regarding to your question, one of the reasons I want annexation is my goals are to possibly do a assisted living. I'm sorry, do an assisted living. Assisted living, a lot of people, old people, I've lived in the same house pretty much my entire life. So when I get old, maybe they'll send me back there. Romeo Bruce Fire Rescue is literally 3, 5, maybe 6 minutes away. In Ray Township, I believe the EMS comes out of Richmond, a little bit further. I've been dealing with Armada Township, trying to get sewer because I own the property. I used to own a company called REI, Corton, the trucks. And I have about 75 acres there. I've been dealing with the the Township of Armada, the Village of Romeo for over 20 years, trying to get sewer across the street, and it's not working well. And it's nobody's fault, but the Village of Romeo has their plant, their infrastructure, their toys, and to just like what Mr. Siebert says, we'll just run a line across. It's Romeo's sewer plant. They shouldn't just run it across for no charges. So I understand that. So my goal is or my desires is to have annexation as opposed to a 425, and I'm open to any questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Leonetti.
Actually, he said everything I was going to ask him, so I'm good again. Thank you.
Commissioner Haw.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Real quickly, you indicated for 20 years you have not had access to water and sewer.
Correct.
Is it a different,
Pardon me?
was that at a different property you were talking about?
That is a different property, but go ahead.
All right.
Yes.
Well, I just want to make sure you're talking about the same.
Yes. So with that being the case, is that what prompted your request for this annexation on your properties?
Yes.
Had you approached the other municipality, the attorney claimed he hadn't had any conversation with anybody on the proposal that's in front of us. Had you done that or talked to anybody about trying to get this resolved without going through annexation?
We've had, I've spoke with the Village of Romeo, and Village of Romeo, I don't believe has any interest, and I can't recall any exact meetings, but I know there was conversation. They are not interested in a 425. When I was at a Ray Township meeting, and Ray Township was okay with the annexation, but then the cemetery issue came up. We'll do it, but you got to take the cemetery. So I'm kind of like, I'm being held hostage because it's, I don't know, I'm guessing $2,000-3,000 a year to mow the grass there and take care of headstones and the like.
So you just said $2,000 to $3,000 a year to mow the grass?
It's a decent-sized cemetery.
I would certainly
I'm
bet
saying
you
it's,
guys have paid more in attorney fees than that amount.
I don't know, but I don't want to mow a cemetery.
Thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Gillette.
Thank you. You mentioned police and fire services in Romeo as well.
Correct.
The fact that they have a police department in Romeo specifically, and you're looking at a seniors facility, how much of a role has that played in your decision?
Oh, I think it's a large role. If if you had a loved one in a home, retirement home, and EMS is 15 minutes away versus 5 minutes away, I might think seriously about where I'm putting mom. It depends how much I like her, but that goes. Okay.
Commissioner Brown. All right, well, you already spoke once, right? You passed twice? Holy, come on. Go
Real
ahead.
quick, this is really a question for you, Frank, if you don't mind, for our corporation.
If we're still, I would like to, we have more questions for this. Yes, so just give me, I'm sorry, I was jumping in real quick. Well, we can ask Frank another question. I was just going to mention my point of view on this, too. I don't know, and I'd like to hear from the attorney from Romeo again if there has been discussion on an interlocal agreement, because it does seem like, reasonable minds would say that that would be the best way to go rather than just plain taking property from one community into another. Your argument, I hate to say, about police and fire doesn't hold any water with me, because your property is in your city, and anybody that is up and down that street that wants better police or fire, if that's what you would call it, and I'm sure you are, then they say, well, I don't like having to call our department. I want to call Romeo's department, so I want you to annex my house so I get better police and fire. Now, I understand the theory behind it. We all want better access to police and fire, but these kind of reasons that doesn't weigh with me on whether I'm going to vote yes or no on this, right? Because you've had this property your whole life, correct? I would really like to hear at the end of this if there's any discussion or was any discussion. Mr. Siebert said there was no discussion ever about an interlocal agreement, and that sounds like the best way to go first. I don't understand why that didn't happen, and maybe there's just a reason Romeo wouldn't want to do that. I'm not sure.
On another subject, dealing with Armada, Romeo is looking for and they should, a use charge. And whether you have any flow or not, there's going to be a use charge, and Romeo should charge that, and with annexation, there isn't that. But I'll let Mr. Clark talk on that if it be.
It seems like a use agreement, gives everybody the opportunity to decide how much the use would cost and what benefits it would have to everybody. And it's my first real, hearing about this, the interlocal agreement, seems to me like it should have been addressed and at least come to a stalemate first before we're here. It's kind of like a hostile takeover, is what we're looking at here. Commissioner Brown, did you change your mind after my comments?
Say that this property's been in suspension for too many years with nothing good happening on it. This is a prime piece of property right in an industrial core that's being developed to the north of it and to the south of it. And yet it sits there and it's been underutilized for too many years, in my opinion, having been out there for a long time. I don't prefer it. I don't ever like to see annexation. I like to think people work it out, but this expedites the process. It's cleaner, it gets things done a lot quicker. People are talking about expenses. You want more attorney fees? Well, try to get a 425 established. I went through that with the city of Richmond out there early in my term, and it was messy. And there's no easy way to do it. This is clean and gets it done. And, I wish all the parties in my district got along and just said, let's just sign off. But in the end, it's going to be a win-win for everyone. And I'd like to see us get this approved today and get on with it so we can get the development out there and get taxes and jobs created out there in the north end, because we need it. Economy's great right now. If we try to stick our nose into something that they've been working on for years, only is going to cause further delays and expense. And right now the economy's good. I want them to invest in there now before the economy starts to slip here, maybe in 18 months from now. So that's my stay on it. So I'd appreciate my colleagues' support and respect the fact that this has been an issue they've been working. They didn't just come out for this idea yesterday. They've been thinking about it. It's been thoughtful and got here without an easy. They labored over this decision to get here. Thank you.
So I have Commissioner Carabelli next, but he wants to ask someone else a question. Commissioner Kleinfeld, do you have a question for property owner?
No, for the Ray Township.
Okay. Thank you very much for coming up. Then I have Commissioner Carabelli next on the list.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You want to take this, maybe we should take this after we get the motion. This is a public hearing, so this is their chance to talk. We can close the public hearing and go into the motion, and then we can ask all the questions we want. So let's if we don't have anybody from the public left, there we go. Hello.
Hello. Good afternoon, Board of Commissioners. I'm Christine Melzon. I'm the president of the Village of Romeo. I'm happy to be here before you this afternoon, my first time, so excuse me if I seem a little nervous. I just wanted to reassure the board, this petition came before us before I took office as president. It happened in 2018 with the different leadership. When I took office on November 20th, the petition still came back for me for an annexation request. I did have all the parties come and meet on several occasions, asking to discuss this, especially over the cemetery. I understand that the petition originally incorporated the property directly abutting, so it would sandwich between the cemetery in between. And that's sort of what brought up the cemetery issue. And I said, already have a cemetery. I know how much work the cemetery is and how it taps our resources, not something that I'm interested in. I suggested to the property owner, you work out a deal with Ray Township if you want this annexation request to be presented before my board, who's going to maintain and care for that cemetery, because it wasn't an obligation that I wanted to undertake. Whatever opportunity presented itself for Mr. Zahowski to sell that property to the state of Michigan occurred outside of any discussions that I had. The request then came back to me for annexation. It wasn't a 425 request, it was a request for annexation. I have the obligation to act on that request presented to me. We do currently have a 425 agreement that we've been working on probably for 9 years with Armada Township, that is to the east of Powell Road. That's abuts up against our industrial park. They also need sewer and water capacity in Armada Township. And we've been working numerous administrations and boards trying to come up to an agreement. The problem is, as indicated, there's infrastructure work that has to be done. When you look at the capacities available with our plant, with our facility, what would it take to upgrade the lift stations and what's going through the pipes and all that sort of work? So a 425 is way more complicated, in my opinion, in my experience working with a different municipality than an annexation request. Again, it was never a request to steal a property grab from another municipality. We would never do that. But the request came before me from a property owner, and I have to fulfill that request. So that's where I'm at. Does anybody have any questions for me?
Thank you. I'm Commissioner Romano. Are you?
I guess a statement more so than a question. I just heard the lady say, the president of Romeo say, they've been in conversation now for the last 9 years. I heard Mr. Brown say, enough of this. This has been going on for a long time. Let's bring it to a head today. And 9 years? So I'm kind of in agreement with Mr. Brown. Thank you.
Let's be clear, that was for a different property,
It was for a different property, but we are entertaining 425 agreements. We have a 425 agreement with our neighbor in Bruce Township to the north, who also utilizes our facility. So we are familiar with that process. It is just a matter of infrastructure and what can we handle and what can we assess in the special assessment district to pass along those costs.
Thank you. Commissioner Drollet.
Thank you. Could you do a 425 agreement for other services beyond just the sewer and water? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, for a request for...
Police, for fire. I mean, if this gentleman's going to start relying on Romeo for the police, the fire, the water, the sewer, the electricity, everything else, it's got to be done through a whole bunch of interlocal agreements and compacts and this and that. Maybe it just makes more sense to be part of Romeo.
Right. We currently contract our fire and ALS service through Bruce Township. It's not through a 425, to my understanding. It's just a contracted service with a 3-5-year end date. All the other essential services we provide. We have our own infrastructure in place.
Thank you.
Commissioner Lucido.
I would just like to echo what Commissioner Brown said. 9 years trying to get something settled, and Mr. Zahowski mentioned 20 years he's been going back and forth. I think we should just get this done today and vote on it.
All right. I don't have any other questions for you. Is there anybody else in the audience that wishes to speak?
Can I use my remaining 30 seconds?
There's no rules. Come on up. You can.
Great, thank you. I've been at enough meetings, I figured I'd get called out of order at my first Board of Commissioners meeting. I want to make one thing clear, because I think there might be a misunderstanding about this agreement that I'm talking about. I'm not talking about a 425. A 425 is an agreement that a piece of property is conditionally transferred from one community to another community. The receiving community will provide certain services. So if you have a chunk of 100 acres in, I don't know, the city of Richmond, and they want to take a piece of the township of Richmond so they can provide water, sewer, police, fire, EMS, the whole shoot and match, they'll take that 100 acres, they'll transfer it for 10 years, and at the end of that 10 year, it reverts back. They are complicated, and they may take a long time to negotiate. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about something as simple. I got 5 of these sitting on my desk I'm doing right now. A guy in the village of of New Baltimore needs water. Chesterfield is right next door. The guy doesn't have water from New Baltimore. We do an intergovernmental agreement. We dig a hole under the road, we hook up his house, and the agreement says he's going to be a customer at Chesterfield. At such time in the future when water gets there, he'll disconnect and hook up. That's all we're talking about, is simply an agreement between Romeo and Ray, which says, we're going to allow you, Romeo, to take this line and run it 500 feet to that gentleman's piece of property, and you can provide water, and you can provide sewer, and you can bill him for it. We have not been involved in 9 years or 9 months of discussions. We have been involved in no discussions. What Mr. Zakowski's problem is in Armada, what the Village's 425 issues are, is totally irrelevant to why we're here. We can get that agreement knocked out in a day because there's nothing to negotiate. We're just going to let him bring it in and bill Mr. Zakowski as if he were a customer of Romeo, and there's no boundary changes. So don't get hung up on all these other parcels of property and 425 agreements which do not apply to this. This is not what we're talking about, okay?
Thank you, Commissioner Leonetti.
I do have a
believe
question for you, Mr. Siebert. I have a question for you. What about the idea that there's a win-win for everybody? If this decision is made today and we do the annexation, it's a win-win, it sounds like, for everybody. What's the loss to Ray
We're taking
Township?
17 acres out of Ray Township.
Well, what's the loss? What's the loss to Ray Township? You're still going to get the operating millage,
Well, if Mr.
from what I understand.
If Mr. Zakowski builds it for senior housing, as he would, we're going to be able to tax that. We'll get the tax revenues from it.
Is that why you're asking for some kind of intergovernmental agreement? You guys work something out with regard to that, those
Yep.
details?
If he would have, by the way, he's never proposed any plans to develop that site, ever, to Ray Township. If he brought in plans, and we knew what the water capacity was, sewer capacity was, I'd pick up the phone and call Mr. Clark. I'd say, Mark, let's sit down, let's work out an intergovernmental agreement, and all you got to do is drag it to his property, and we're done. There's no boundary changes. I've never seen one of these done, particularly where the line is less than 500 feet away. I mean, this is next door to the property, it almost abuts it. Yet they're asking for a boundary line change? This agreement could be knocked out in a day. I've done dozens of them, and Mark has done dozens of them. This is simply a failure to communicate between the property owner and Village of Romeo.
And I guess that's kind of why I've been wanting to ask somebody this question. Look, you got 3 attorneys, I know all of you.
Yeah.
Okay? I don't understand how the 3 attorneys, I feel like we're a circuit court judge now having to make a decision.
Somebody's gotta come
And we're
to
like,
Ray.
go out in the hallway and figure it out. What's going on between the 3 of you, between Larry, Mark, and you?
It's not the lawyers. I have been involved in this project for, I don't know, maybe a month now. And the first question I asked is, why didn't Mr. Zakowski come in and ask that we go to Romeo? I'd call Mark up and we'd knock out the agreement. I'm positive we can knock it out. There's nothing to negotiate. All we're doing is running a line 500 feet. Still their line.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Commissioner Duje.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If he wants to annex it and move to make this Romeo versus Ray Township, it's his property, he can do what he wants. He's owned it. I have no problems with any of it. If the man wants to, his address in Romeo, so be it. So I have no problems with any of it. We're going to sit here and argue about annexing or moving or this or that. It's his property, he can do with it what he wants. And this is all legal. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Siebert, I don't have any other questions. Are there any other members of the public wishing to speak during the public hearing?
Could I just respond on behalf of the village? And I think you would pose the question about the intergovernmental agreement or interlocal agreement or the 425. I've known Bob for 40 years. I really appreciate his optimism, but it's not quite so easy. Everybody wants what somebody else has, and that's not a bad thing. That's sometimes why we prosper. We achieve, we aspire to do more things, to acquire more things for the good or the bad. The village has had a wastewater treatment plant probably for more than 70 years, maybe even longer. It's duly licensed by the state of Michigan, the EPA. We've jumped through all the hoops. And over those years, taxpayers have funded the cost of that. And I'm glad to have it in the village. You flush the toilet and down it goes, and everybody lives happily ever after. That's a great thing. But the taxpayers have paid for that year after year after year. And now what Mr. Siebert, with all due respect, is saying, hey, no problem, let's dig a trench under the road, run the pipe, and now you pay going forward. Well, we in the village have been paying for that plant, the establishment of that plant, for years and years and years. And so it's not so simple to say, just run the line, turn on the spigot, and out will come the water, flush the toilet, and down it will go. It's not that simple. It sounds that simple, but it's not. And I don't think a 425 or an interlocal agreement or an intergovernmental agreement is the answer. And I can just tell you at the moment, the Village of Romeo has no interest in that type of an agreement. If you're in the village, you're in the village, you get the services, you pay the taxes. If you're not in the village, you're not.
Commissioner Kleinfeld, if you don't mind.
I'll be very brief, and I'm going to tell you something. No matter which way I vote, I'm not going to feel good about myself. Number one, I kind of resent that nobody went to Ray Township and that the owner didn't have a conversation, and maybe this whole thing could have gone smoothly. But number two, even if you annex, he's not going to pay back years and years and years, and when you build a new house in Romeo, I'll bet you don't make them pay back years and years and years. I'll bet when they flush that toilet, that's the first time they're paying.
That is correct.
So let's not throw a bunch of stuff out here that doesn't have anything to do with anything. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't have any other questions for you.
Thank you.
I'm not sure if we've heard everything we need to hear, but any killing me. Come on up. I know you're an attorney, so you can promise it's going to be short, but Leonetti does all the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Scott?
We've met. I too have known Mr. Siebert for 40 years. I have dealt with Christine Anderson on this subject with regard to, yeah, okay, we want to be included in the annexation because we're going to dump the cemetery off. We don't want you, now you're not going to take the cemetery, we're going to oppose this. Today, Christine Anderson yesterday emailed me and said, can you send me a copy of the deed on a parcel you sold to the state? And I did. Today is the first time ever anyone has said, oh, we can just drag this line across the street. So with response to your question, it's not like we haven't had conversations. We've had conversations for 2 years. What do you want to do with this? Do you want it in? Do you want it out? Who's going to maintain it? And not once did anyone on behalf of Ray Township or anything else say, well, hey, why don't you just drag this line in? We'll let you do that. Today's the first time ever. And with all due respect, they knew they were coming here today. They knew I was coming here today. They could have called before today. I oppose the idea that nothing's been said for 2 years. There's been conversation. There's been a petition with them included. That didn't happen by accident. That happened with their consent and their knowledge. And only when we just said we're not going to take over the maintenance, now it becomes an issue. Now you can just drag a line underneath.
Great.
So, I mean, with all due respect, there has been conversations.
Got your point. Thank you. I don't have any speakers up here. We have a bunch of attorneys in the room, so this might last forever. But I'm going to say that everybody that spoke once or twice, especially, that we're going to have to cut it off at that. I'll make my rule, since there's no rules.
Hi, I'm Joe Jarzina, Ray Township Supervisor. The millages, we would get our, according to Headley Amendment, the .95. The fire operating millage would go to Bruce Township because Bruce Township takes care of the Village of Romeo with the fire obligation. The village police department would get their millage. Our library would lose their millage. The Bruce Township Romeo Library would get the millage for that. But as far as for the fire and the police support, my farm is on 26 Mile Road in Romeo Plank. Today there was a terrible accident at that intersection, and the van rolled over into our farm yard. Ray Township has a very good, competent fire department. Macomb was there. We have all the communities in local fire help each other. If something was to happen at 32 Mile Road and Powell in Ray Township, Bruce or Washington would respond. It's not about timely being there on time because we have one little station in the center of the township. And as far as Romeo, They have never come to us with any, the only reason we were aware of the annexation was because of one of the girls in our office, who is now their clerk, said, "Did you read the paper? Romeo's voting for annexation of Ray Township tonight on their board." So that's how we found out about it. And Mr. Zahowski's never given me a site plan. I've sat in with our planners for all developments. First thing anything happens, we sit down with our planners and with our engineers and a working site plan and say, let's make this happen. We're not against development. We just want to see it done the correct way. There's two ways to do business. I've been in business for 45 years. There's the right way and this way. That's all I have to say. Any questions?
Commissioner Carabelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I haven't heard from either party the numbers that I wanted to hear. You told me what you're losing as far as tax dollars.
Correct.
I haven't heard the figure from Romeo. They're obviously doing it because they're going to be gaining tax dollars.
They have 14.5 millage on their village operating. They would gain 14.5 mills.
So it's a win for Romeo. Your tax base is a loss.
Correct.
Okay? So it's not a win-win for everybody.
We would still maintain our .96 operating millage.
But no new construction or
No
anything?
new construction,
Okay.
correct. And they would be in charge of zoning. Any plans would come to their planning commission, not the Ray Township. We would be involved in no decision-making on the property site.
Okay. So to make it clear, so I can understand, Ray Township is not in favor of this?
Correct.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Chairman.
you.
Thank you. I don't have any other speakers. Any other members of the public wishing to speak? All right. Any other members of the public wishing to speak? I don't see anybody. I need a motion to close public hearing. Commissioner Romano, support by Commissioner Lucido. All, please vote.
Let's make it clear what we're voting on. Yes, is annexation.
No, we're voting to go out of public session. Public hearing. Yes. Glad you were asking. All right, motion passed 13-0. Item number 7, request from Village of Romeo, Resolution 19-3766. Need a motion to approve and adopt Resolution 19-3766, resolution and order determination approving the Village of Romeo's second amended petition for annexation of property from Ray Township. I have a motion by Commissioner Brown, support by Commissioner Romano. Any members of the board wishing to speak on this? Any other?
If I may, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
We've heard all the other attorneys. I'd like to hear from our attorney, Frank.
Good afternoon again.
Frank, this is peculiar. I mean, how often does this type of situation happen? I mean, this is a really, look, I'm going to tell you where I'm at. I've got an individual property owner, and I completely respect individual property owners' rights. I understand that. But on the other hand, I'm confused because this, as you said, the statute is very vague in some ways. So what's to say somebody says, like I live in Harrison Township on the water, and let's say, I want to go to those nice Utica schools that Carabelli has, and I'd like to petition the Utica, township and say, hey, look, I want to have my property here on the water come over to Utica so that my daughter can go to the Utica schools. I'm sure Utica's going to be real happy to get my property on the water over in their tax rolls. Harrison Township might not like it, but I mean, this is just a strange situation, and it seems like it's ripe for an agreement that they should have amongst each other. Like, in other words, I get the process. The individual property owner went to Romeo and said, hey, I'd like to petition to become part of Romeo with an annexation. Did Ray have an opportunity to I mean, it seems like, why are we the body that has to decide that? I know the statute says that, but it's just a real peculiar situation. What are your thoughts?
Well,
go. Well, I care because he's our counsel, and this is a tough decision.
It may seem peculiar if you've never dealt with this before. Now, when I got out of law school, I clerked for the Court of Appeals, and one of the judges I worked for was assigned the Shelby Utica case. So I became an expert in the annexation a few months out of law school. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court disagreed with what my judge decided, but when you understand the rationale, you realize we really were right, okay? And there was politics involved, for some reason, which is really what I think happens in annexation, is politics becomes involved in what really is a private a property matter issue. Like the problem, now, from what I remember from the Shelby Utica case I worked on, is that one of the things you look at in annexation, and the other thing is you have to remember, what are villages? Villages are baby cities. They form as villages, and then they eventually would turn into a city, okay? And the way they do that is they annex property. And that's why the law allows the village to annex property. So it's not unusual. It may seem peculiar if you've never dealt with it before. And, you know, I've known Bob for how many years? Yeah, not 40, okay? I just got my invitation to join the Senior Bar Association. But, yeah, Bob is, I've started practicing law in this county in 1985, and I've known Bob and Larry and Mark since then. So, but that's really the way it works. So it's not peculiar. It actually is the way this is designed. The government in Michigan is designed. So villages annex some property, they have better services typically, and when you look at annexation, you look at who's got the better services. So and if the property owner says, you know what, I want to be part of that community that has better services, they petition and they can join. And really the way that this one is handled is that it pretty much gives this board about as much discretion as any board would ever get in an issue. So you get to decide up or down whether the annexation is there.
And of course, Romeo could decline his petition too. Like, let's say they could have declined it, but Romeo made a decision to do it.
That's correct.
Okay.
So
the only concern I have then is for Ray Township. And it goes back to my hypothetical example. If I decide to jump over and go to Utica, I mean, that's not even contiguous. It's not even connecting property.
Yeah, it has to be connected. And the school districts are a different issue.
Well, yeah, that would be my motivation.
Right, but you can have multiple, the school district boundary lines aren't affected generally by the annexation.
Okay.
It's just the municipal boundaries of the village of Romeo. And that's really how villages get started. I mean, that's how the villages get started. It's the same way. They take part of the property of the townships. And they're allowed to expand. So it is kind of a natural progression of a village to annex property.
No, I appreciate that, Frank, because it was, like I said, it was new to me. And if you're saying that the statute was enacted to, as you say, to have villages develop into cities, and this is a common practice that, individual property owners on the border of a thriving or a developing village or municipality says, hey, look, I want to join you, that the statute was enacted for that purpose.
Right, and one of the reasons we see less of it today is because the townships are becoming so developed. So there's not that. So historically, I mean, the statute's been on the books for years, but historically, it just doesn't happen as often anymore. But it's still there, and it's still a process that let's face it, that area is developing. So it wouldn't be unusual in a developing community to see something like this.
All right, thanks, Frank. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Kresha, please, Commissioner Smith. So let me, two things I heard from you. One of them is this was kind of designed in a way that, kind of benefits cities that are growing to be able to annex. If they have better services, that's one of the main reasons that this is allowable, right? Because if you had comparable services but maybe a nicer zip code, that's not really a reason to go over. But better services is one of the main reasons this was developed. I seem to remember in Clinton Township, when I was young, Mount Clemens annexing part of Clinton Township. And I remember not that long afterwards, Clinton Township voting to become a charter township. And I believe that I remember that was done to prevent this type of thing from happening in the future. Am I correct?
That's correct.
So there is a possibility at some point that a lesson, not a lesson, but that the next step for any of the townships seeing things like this can happen is that might be on their list of things to look at so that they don't get property annexed from cities on any side of them that have better services, correct?
Right. The process becomes much more difficult at that point when they become charter townships.
Okay.
So
I don't have any more questions for you, and I don't have any more speakers. So we have a motion on the floor. Please vote. The motion passes 12-1 with Commissioner Carabelli voting no. Item number 8, public participation. Any members of the public wishing to speak on items on today's agenda? Yes.
Yes, I'm back. Good afternoon. Now, this isn't such a pleasant topic to me. My name is Frank Creasha. I live at 45731 Heatherwood, Macomb Township. I think I'm in Commissioner Lucido's district. And I've worked for the county for over 27 years. Now, on your agenda, you have an agreement with UAW Local 412, which I'm a member of. And I'd like to add some facts that I don't think you probably have heard. Now, you remember we did a study for wages and classification. That study said we're underpaid, employees underpaid by 4% on average. We go to the county to negotiate last October, and they give us the 95% plan. You're underpaid 4%, we're going to underpay you 5%. So this is really what's happened in the county. I don't know if you knew that. But then they said, we're not going to use the wages in the study. We're going to come up with our own system. So we're going to overpay some employees, and we're going to take money from the other employees to get our 5% cut. So that's why we're here. When this contract first came up, we rejected it. Now, the county's been loath to address this issue. And what we're doing is the current proposal gives the raises but puts on hold these taxes on the unfortunate employees, of which I'm one, to pay for these raises. We're asking you to approve this, but our concern is, in the past, we've made numerous concessions to this, to the county. We've given up many things that save the county millions of dollars. We were told that this study would be used to pay us a fair wage. We then get back and we see greater inequity in the county's proposal than we had before, which is the exact opposite of what you want to do when you do a wage and classification study. So with that, and we've asked the county, why did you do this? And we get no response. No. Absolutely none. It's just like, well, no, we got classifications and that's where we put you, too bad. So while we approve the proposal before you today, we are very disappointed in the county's failure to value its employees and its refusal to be fair and honest with them. Negotiations are soon beginning on the next contract, and the county does not seem to be willing to change its position. As you are our elected representatives, we ask you to work with us to form labor agreements that recognize the value of each employee in the county. I also have other members here from the local and from the region and other officers that would like to speak. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next member of the public, please step forward. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Please give us your name and address, please.
My name is Lisa Emerson. I'm at 50533 Knightsbridge Drive in Macomb Township. I'm a lifelong resident of Macomb County. I'm also the chairperson for UAW Local 412 Unit 75 and have been an employee of the county for a total of 30 years. I'm here to express my dismay about how employees are being treated during our recent negotiations. I would like to expand on some of the topics that Frank just spoke about related to the UAW Local 412 agreement that's before you today. While we hope you will approve the agreement that is on today's agenda, many issues remain unresolved as we enter regular contract negotiations in the near future. I understand you have been told that this proposal averaged an overall 5% wage increase. This sounds reasonable on the surface, but there are many problems related to the allocation of that 5% raise. The county's chosen, as Frank said, to overpay certain positions and underpay others. And the county wanted this to fit into their new pay grade list that they are implementing, which is contrary to what the class and comp study recommended. The county proposed pay rates for some members that would result in their pay being equal to or less than those they supervise. It will be difficult to retain employees in those positions if something doesn't change. In another unit, the county proposed some positions received nearly a 14% raise, while others were giving a smaller amount to compensate for the larger raise provided to a select few. This was the result of a department head advocating for a raise for those few positions. This caused resentment within that unit. During the wage reopener negotiations, the county was attempting to force us to agree to new pay grades for all employees. Approximately 40% of our bargaining unit was redlined, and 2 entire units were redlined. Again, none of this was consistent with the class and comp study results. Redline positions would mean that the new employees hired in would be making less than current employees who would remain in their current pay grade, causing a 2-tiered environment for workers performing the same job duties. This would cause animosity and resentment between employees. Back in May, after it appeared the county was not willing to budge on the red line positions, we brought a previous proposal to our members, and the vote resulted in a resounding no. We went back to the table. The county agreed that red line positions would not be placed into new pay grades at this time. That is what is before you today. However, we anticipate that the county will be pursuing the same pay grades for redlined employees during regular contract negotiations. The path the county has chosen to implement the study is causing further problems which the study was originally intended to solve. The county spent an enormous amount of taxpayer money for the class and comp study, and it is not being followed. County employees have taken many concessions in the recent past, and now that the economy is on the upswing, all we ask is that we be paid a fair market wage at today's rates. We shouldn't be practically begging to receive a 2017 wage for a contract that includes 2020 and beyond.
Excuse me, you have 30 seconds. We have 5 minutes originally, but I think we might
If
be over.
previously proposed pay rates are implemented at a later date, it will impact the county's ability to provide quality service for the public. The county is already struggling to attract and retain talented employees. We need to do something to improve the situation. We're asking for you to work with us to ensure that future bargaining agreements provide fair compensation for all employees, which in turn will provide better service to the public.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Next member of the public. Good afternoon. Please give us your name and address, and you have 5 minutes.
All right. I'll keep this short. My name is Daniel Groth. I live at 50205 Spruce, Industrial Township in Commissioner Kraft's district. I've served the last 10 years in the county over at the Juvenile Center. I'd like to address the UAW 412 agreement. I'm one of the stewards for our Unit 75, Local 412. As Frank pointed out, the county underpays its employees by 5%. The data was collected from 2016 to 2017, presented to the county in 2018. What the data does not include was the cost of living adjustment from 2016 to 2019, where we put our vote. If you factor in the cost of living, which is on average 2% each year, the county now roughly underpays its employees by 11%. Again, we were disappointed with the proposal since we were negotiating 2017 wages for 2019 and beyond. As a dedicated county employee supporting a young family, I ask the county pay a fair and honest wage and show the value to each of their employees. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members, please come up. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Christy Wolf. I live at 44059 Manitou, and I'm going to keep this very short. All I'm asking is that you please pass this collective bargaining agreement, wage renegotiation, reopener, so that we can continue to move forward with our contract negotiations. We've already taken long enough, and we want to keep moving and keep working and get paid. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Board. My name's Tom Brenner. I'm an international servicing rep, UAW Region 1. I just asked that today that you support, I'm here to ask for your support for my leadership that spoke, and I ask in the future, as we're just entering into doing the master agreement, that you support us in any of our movement forward. As you all know, the county has had a upswing and enjoyed some good years, and we look forward to being able to bargain to get some of that because our members have made a lot of sacrifices over the last few years. We haven't seen any significant raises here in the county in over 15 years. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public wishing to speak? Any other members of the public wishing to speak? Last time, seeing no other members of the public wishing to speak, we're going to close public participation. Item number 9, we don't have any new correspondence from the county executive. So we're going to move to item number 10, presentations. I'm sorry, it says short presentations by Detroit Institute of Arts. Need a motion to receive and file. Commissioner Leonetti, supported by Commissioner Romano. Good afternoon. Mr. Gargaro, how are you?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Commissioners. I'm Gene Gargaro, the volunteer chair of the board at the Detroit Institute of Arts. I've asked for 1 minute of our allotted time, and anytime I have the opportunity to thank this commission and its members for the partnership that we enjoy with the citizens of Macomb County, I take advantage of that. The Detroit Institute of Arts is one of the great museums in the country. It is at the same time a large business, and the board is charged with running that business as efficiently and effectively as we can. I want to say that since the millage, the regional millage passed in August of 2012, every decision we make with the thought of the constituency that we serve in Wayne, Oakland, and Macomb counties. And that is a fact. We are in a service business at the museum, and every one of the employees, all of my board members, and all of the volunteers work with that thought in mind. I'm very proud to be here today. This is an exciting time for the institution, its leadership, and the director and head of our public affairs will now give you the details of the first half of 2019. But again, thank you for this opportunity. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Anybody have any questions of Mr. Gargaro? If you do, let me know because it's not up here. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Always great to see you.
Nice to be here.
Mr. Flynn, how are you?
Good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. I know that you had a long meeting and you have a long meeting, so I won't give the presentation that we normally give. We want to be as transparent as possible. All the information from our first 6 months of the year are here. There's a narrative attached that details every single school that we've touched, the different senior groups that we've reached. We always have free admission at the museum every year. And some of our community partnerships that include our Inside Out installations throughout the county, our public art projects, which are becoming a lot more popular. One's being done in Romeo right now, and one's being done in Warren at the Rec Center. These are extremely popular. They've received high accolades, and more communities are wanting public art in their community. We have a County Leaders Night on October 11th. We hope all of you can attend. We're highlighting Humble and Human, as well as the opening of a Friendas. We've really increased, you won't see it in the first 6 months of the year because we did have some really tough weather, but we're doing some really exciting programs with education. In Lance Cruz, we've just inked a deal where every 3rd, 5th, and 7th grader will come down to the museum. Every 3rd grader in Warren Con, and every 7th and 8th grader in Romeo. And so we're trying to create these systemic partnerships because we know, by and large, that the school program is what's most valued by the residents that we serve. And so with that, we're happy to answer any questions that you might have. And Salvador is here also just to welcome you and talk about one exhibition. We'll limit them to one.
Dave took most of your time, Salvador. Welcome.
Thank you for having me here with the team. We're very excited for the fall program that we have. We were able to expand or extend our Impressionist exhibition that we did with the Albert Knox Museum in Buffalo, and it's going to go through January 2020. It is a great show that brings a number of works by Monet, Gauguin, Van Gogh, and many other great French Impressionist and post-Impressionist artists. The exhibition has already received 100,000 visits, and we're hoping that we will double it by the end of this year. We have also a number of programs this fall, like the exhibition that we are doing with the Louvre, where we bring two very impressive portraits of Ben Franklin and George Washington, as well as the Ofrenda exhibition, that is an exhibition that we develop with the community. There's a ton of beautiful art that we were able to bring this fall for the residents of Macomb County. And I just want to emphasize that this is very, very expensive to do, but we were able to do it for free for all the residents in Macomb County. So very excited for the fall. I won't talk about what's happening in 2020, but it's going to be a big year for us, and I'm very excited for the upcoming future. Thank you for having us here.
Thank you. I have Commissioner Romano up for...
Just a general statement. The DIA today is not the DIA of my term, all right?
Okay.
I hear nothing but, and I'm not saying this to make you feel good, I'm simply making a statement of fact. Your Star Wars exhibition, your outdoor paintings that you've exhibited through Sterling Heights, I hear nothing but great accolades of how the DIA is moving forward today, as it was not moving forward, again, back in my day. And I think a lot of people are excited by it. And I attribute that to you and your staff. So you're doing a tremendous job. Keep it up. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Romano. I have to say that this is not only the merit of the DIA team, it's also the work that we have developed with all of you in the county. And the Star Wars exhibition was an idea that came from this commission. So really, thank you so much for your input, for listening to us, and for providing these amazing ideas that we were able to transform into great product for the residents of Macomb County.
Thank you. Commissioner Brown.
Yeah, thank you. I've heard comments about the Romeo exhibit and the people lined up around the place. We wonder what's going on. If there's an accident or a fight, they're all looking around at art. It's pretty cool. and
we like that.
And I was recently on Mackinac Island also and saw art up on all the way up on Mackinac Island too. So it's not only you're getting well out beyond the boundaries. It's good to see.
Commissioner Brown, we want to go beyond the walls of the museum. That is our big idea for us. And this is one of the great things that this millage has provided the DIA. It's not only the financial support, for which we are super grateful, but it's that this millage has made the museum a better place, has changed the culture of the organization, and we want to be in the community with all of you to bring this great art because we have a great collection. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Kleinfeld.
I can't find Dave's salary in here anywhere. No, I'm kidding. I don't have anything. I'm just teasing Dave.
He's not smiling.
I was told it wasn't enough.
We're thinking you space. He works hard.
We're good? Commissioner Leonetti.
Just one last thing. I appreciate the outdoor art everywhere too, but I know you were here earlier, so if you're going to put outdoor art between Romeo and Ray Township, I would suggest you put it far into Romeo or far into Ray Township so we don't have any more annexations here. Thank you. Good to see you.
Yeah, there's a civil war out there now.
Thank you. We don't have any other speakers, so we have a motion to receive and file. I always appreciate you guys coming out and giving us the good news and the good programs that you guys are involved in. We love to hear it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We'd like to see 2 out of the 3 of you come out here all the time, too.
Thank you.
Sorry,
Thank you
Dave.
for the opportunity.
Sorry, Dave. We love seeing you. Please vote. All right. Motion passes 11-0. Item number 11, appointments. A, Office of Senior Services Division Director. We had a motion to appoint Sheila Cote to the Office of Senior Services Division Director. Can I have a motion? Motion by Leonetti. Oh, I'm sorry. God, I have you written right here. Motion by Marv Sauger and support by Commissioner Leonetti. Your hand I saw next.
Yeah, I've known Sheila for many years and her family, and she's a very brilliant woman, and you're going to do a great job up there. We're all going to be proud of you, and good luck to you.
All right. Do I have any other speakers on this? I don't have any other speakers, so please vote. Motion passes 12-0. Item 11B, substance use, oh yeah, congratulations, Sheila, welcome, thank you. Substance Use Disorder Oversight Policy Board, we have 2 vacancies, we have 1 person on, we're going to leave another one open. Michael Barrett, we have a motion to appoint Michael Barrett to the board. Support by Brown. Motion by Brown, support by Mr. Myjack. Is Mr. Barrett here? Nope. All right. I don't have any other speakers on this. Please vote. Motion passes 12-0. Item 12, Government Oversight Committee recommendations. We have a motion for their entirety, A, B, and C. Support for that, Commissioner Drolet. Any conversations, Commissioner Kleinfeld?
Just very quickly, several of the speakers I think already know, but we have made requests that we actually are part of the process before negotiating, not after the TA, because it also forces us into approving a budget based on what was negotiated, high or low. But just because of all the comments today, just want to make sure the public understands, we don't even see it until after the TA and don't have any authority with respect to that. At least that's the perception and the belief at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers? I don't see any. Please vote. Motion passes 12-0. Item 13, Internal Services Committee recommendations, co-chairs Phil Kraft and Jim Carabelli. Would anyone like to run these up through J for me? And then we'll leave K separate? All right. We have a motion by Commissioner Kraft and supported by Commissioner Sauger.
Mr. Chair, actually through I.
H-I-G. Oh, through I? Yes. Okay. Oh, there you go. I'm sorry. Yep. So would you be willing to through I, Commissioner Sauger? Thank you. All right. Any comments on this? I don't have any speakers on this, so please vote. Motion passes 12-0. Item 13J, budget amendment for capital improvement fund jail surveillance project for $301,976. We have a motion for that. Commissioner Sauger, Commissioner Duje, excuse me for what? Thank you. Any comments on this? I don't have any speakers on this. Commissioner Kleinfeld.
If you remember, I requested information with respect to,
insurance. Yes.
It is attached in the system. I meant to give it to you separately. We
Sorry.
did get the insurance from all 3.
Okay, thank you.
And just for everybody's information, there was a lot of issues with this project, and not that we don't agree with the project, but the way that the requests came in and didn't come in, and there was just a lot of confusion on dollars and where they were being spent and the actual numbers at the end of the day. Now, everything has kind of rolled around, but Crystal put something together for you just to read the summary of kind of the issues we've had with this. And obviously, everybody seems to be for this, but I just want you to realize that that there's still work that needs to be done on this process. So I don't have any other speakers on 13J. Please vote. Motion passes 11-1 with Commissioner Drolet voting no. Item 13K. Contracts for jail surveillance project, Motor City Technology, $1.2 million, 637. Presidio Network Equipment Installation, $149,683. And Metro Technology Services, additional project management fee of $20,283. Need a motion to approve pending Corp Council's approval, and I will talk to that in just 1 minute. So if I could get a motion, Commissioner Dujay, supported by Commissioner Sauger. Crystal noticed at the last minute that it made it through the whole queue, but did not have the Corp Council's approval on it. So we asked that he come up and maybe just give us a verbal on his approval, and we'll still wait for the written approval on it, but we can approve it pending that.
Thank you, Chair. I can't imagine how it could have gotten through the system with anyone in the chain not approving it, but I certainly do approve this, and I'll be happy to codify that or document it in writing.
Fantastic. I don't have any speakers on this, so please vote. Do you vote yes? All right. Motion passes 11-1 with Commissioner Drollet voting no. Item 14, Public Services Committee recommendations. We have a motion to move them in their entirety, A through J, support by Commissioner Leonetti. Do we have any speakers on this? I do not see any speakers on, oh, I'm sorry. Might have a speaker. Commissioner Carabelli?
Oh, I think he just left.
Who did?
Jago?
Yes, he did.
Okay, I just was talking about, after that, the savings, the yearly savings, if we can opt out after the first year, I want to make sure we do see those actual savings realized, because if not, I want to review that for the next 2 years of that contract. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers? I don't have any on the queue, so please vote. Motion passes 11-0. Item 15A, Budget Amendment, Friend of the Court, Indirect Cost Adjustment for $754,605. Motion to approve. Commissioner Leonetti, support. Commissioner Romano. Any speakers? I don't show any. Please vote. Motion passes 11-0. Item 16, Finance, Audit, and Budget Committee recommendations. 16A, a budget amendment for indirect cost charges for finance, $28,372,000. Minor adjustment. Motion to approve. Commissioner Hall, supported by Commissioner Drollet. I don't have any speakers. Please vote. Motion passes 11-0. Item 17, ordinances. Ordinance 2019-03, FY 2020, September year-end funds budget appropriations ordinance. Motion to adopt. Commissioner Brown, supported by Commissioner Kraft. I don't have any speakers. Please vote. Motion passes 11-0. Item 18, resolutions. Let's go with Resolution 18A. And this is written a little wrong. I just want to add to this. This resolution should be 19-3846, choosing election date for proposal levying extra millage to fund the new jail project and rescinding prior resolution 19-3555. I have a motion for that. Commissioner Hall?
Yes.
Support by Commissioner, I saw your hand and heard his voice, so we'll go with Commissioner Sauger. No, I'm sorry, Commissioner Romano, you actually co-authored this. So Commissioner Romano, motion to support. Do we have any discussion on this? Commissioner Hall?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Using your terminology, this is a minor adjustment. We are rescinding the previous resolution. This one takes into consideration the August timeframe for the election. It has the agreement that the financial information and ballot language will be, prior to going on the ballot, sent to the board. We've already, in June or July, reviewed the plan that was presented to us by both the sheriff and Vicky. So I'm making this resolution that we get this on the August 4th, 2020 ballot. I do want to thank my colleague, Mr. Droulet, for indicating the cost of running it on the May ballot, and our chairman that has pushed this arduously to this point. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other speakers on this? I'm going to say that, I'm going to say my piece on it. Anytime that I have an opportunity to let the public make a decision on something, whether I agree with it or not, I will forward it to them to make this decision. And although there are many things going on with Michigan right now, the Michigan Joint Task Force on Jail and Pretrial Incarceration is in full swing right now. And they haven't come up with their recommendations on things, and I'm not sure that we're not jumping the gun a little bit, but if this is where we're going to go with this, we'll let the public decide, and there should be some resolution on their studies by then also. So I don't have any other speakers. Please vote. Oh, are you on there or something?
No, I'm just surprised. No, I have nothing to say.
Okay. I'm surprised. Resolution passes 9-4 with Commissioner Myjack, Brown, Kraft, and Drolet voting no. Item 18B, would anyone like to go 18B through F? Those are full faith and credit for the, Commissioner Miller, okay, supported by Brown, or made by Brown, supported by Commissioner Myjack. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I was just informed. These are the ones we have to do individually. So 18B. Commissioner Brown, supported by Commissioner Myjack. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes 13-0. 18C, Resolution 19-3780, pledging limited tax full faith credit for the Oakland Macomb Interceptor Drainage District bonds, a general obligation limited tax. I need a motion to adopt. Commissioner Romano, supported by Commissioner Myjack. Please vote. Motion passes 13-0. Item 18D, Resolution 19-3791, pledging full faith and credit for the Lake St. Clair Clean Water Initiative for St. Clair Shores, Roseville, East Point Drainage District Refunding Bond Series 2019, and it's a limited tax general obligation. Motion to adopt. Commissioner Douget, supported by Commissioner Haw. Please vote. Motion passes 13-0. Item 18E, Resolution 19-3794, pledging full faith and credit for the North Gratiot Interceptor Drainage District Refunding Bond Series 2020. Motion to adopt. Commissioner Kraft, support by Commissioner Drolet. Please vote. Motion passes 13-0. Finally, 18F, Resolution 19-3796, pledging full faith and credit for the Macomb Interceptor Drainage District Clintondale Pump Station Improvements Drainage District Refunding Bond Series 2020. Motion to adopt. Commissioner Lucido, supported by Commissioner Sauger. Please vote. Motion passes 13-0. Item 19A, proclamation honoring the Ukrainian Honduran Honduras course 100th anniversary. Commissioner Douget, supported by, or motion by Commissioner Douget, support by Commissioner Hall. Commissioner Douget, would you like to speak to this at all, or in?
This group,
short order?
thank you, Mr. Chairman, to everybody. This group has been instrumental in developing the bandura, which is a cross between a harp and a guitar, 60 strings. They've been singing throughout the United States, Canada, and Europe. And I'm thrilled that they are based here in the Detroit area, and they are celebrating their 100th anniversary, and I appreciate everybody's faith in this and vote on this. They will be on October 6th at the Max Fisher Theater on Woodward, where they will be having their concert. If anybody would like to go and would require tickets, please let me know. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I don't have any other speakers on this in Ukrainian or English. Please vote.
I think we should take A separately.
Oh, it's going separate. There's a lot of no votes coming on this, I'm just kidding. Thank you. Item passes 13-0. Item number 20, correspondence. We have correspondence 20A. Anyone like to make a motion for 20A? Commissioner Carabelli, supported by Commissioner Haw. Macomb Daily article we'd like to receive and file that Commissioner Veronica Kleinfeld is serving as whoever you are, I don't know. Ms. Kleinfeld is to serve as the president of the Michigan Association of Counties. You know, you only get a year of this, of accolades. Great. We'll bring the tiara next time. There we go. I don't have you on my list. Commissioner Romano.
We make light of this, but just remember, and I know everybody's aware of this, and I'm not trying to blow smoke here, but there's a tremendous amount of counties that belong to this association, and I think it's quite an honor that Macomb County has its, as the president of this association, Ms. Kleinfeld, and I congratulate you again.
I agree. Yes, almost 83. All right, well, we got Commissioner Hall too. Commissioner Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I too would like to congratulate Veronica. Also, Commissioner Andre down there said there wasn't a picture. This is a beautiful high school photo picture that Veronica pulled out. I mean, it's
That was taken my first day as a county commissioner.
Which was when? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman, I call the question on this issue.
I don't have it. All right, please vote to receive and file 20A. How's this going to come up? Motion passes 13-0. We have correspondence 20B and 20C, and I'd just like to acknowledge that we have a member of the MSU Extension in the audience. Thank you for showing up. Anybody wishing to speak on these two? I don't see any. Please vote. Motion passes. Motion passes 12-0 so far. All right, motion passes 13-0. Any commissioners with new business? I know I have a little list, right?
Really?
Where is that?
That's crazy.
Any commissioners with new business? Commissioner Ryjack.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I just want to speak on basically behalf of the residents that I represent in all practicality. The two reasons why I voted no for the jail project is, one, I think it's not the best project out there. It's very expensive. I think that we can implement steps to address the jail issues as our debt retires. And again, this is a very expensive project. I know it's out there in the public right now that there are other millages coming up next year, and I know there's one, a larger education millage that's going to be in front of the voters next year. I think that proposals for education millages and/or road millages are more pertinent, more important than the jail right now. However, if the voters vote for this jail project and it passes, I will be there 100% to assist this board, the OCE office, and the Sheriff's Department as much as possible. If it does not pass, and I'm speaking on behalf probably of the whole board, we will be there, Vicki, for the Executive's Office and Sheriff's Department to surely implement things that we can do to help out, and the Sheriff's Department if that does not go through. But again, I just want to indicate that it's tough for people out there. Yes, the economy is good, but 87,000 people, I'm going to hammer it again, 26% of our workforce makes $12 an hour or less, and it's very shameful for me that yesterday we can't pass a resolution to support the state increasing the minimum wage faster than they did, but we're okay at the same time asking voters for money that affects our county government, our county bureaucracy. So on one hand, we're asking money on one hand there, but not protecting 87,000 people in the county who do need assistance. And I think that's about it, but thank you again for your time.
Commissioner Romano?
Thank you, Chair. With all due respect to Commissioner Myjack, and I understand where he's coming from, but we had an opportunity here as a commission to pass this millage without asking any of our constituents. We had the power to do that. We all thought back and stepped back and said, wait a minute, this is a lot of money. As I agree with Mr. Myjack, it's a lot of money. Have I the right to spend my constituents' money for something they may or may not want? And my answer to that was, no, I don't have that right. And that's why I felt putting it on the ballot, let the people decide if this is a priority for them or if it isn't a priority. And that's why I voted and supported the fact that we're putting it on the August primary. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There are a lot of priorities, not only in this county, in this state, in this country. Education, roads, the list goes on and on. It's a debate that just took place up in Lansing over a budgetary process dealing with all of these attributes. Nobody came out of there happy. I put this resolution together. We have been discussing this item for the better part of 10 months, back and forth. I know the number that I heard Vicki or Tony use was 20 hours of discussion showing up in front of this board to try and explain the need. What we have done is given the voters of Macomb County, as you said, Mr. Chairman, it doesn't get any better than letting the voters decide whether or not this is a priority to them. Because should it go down, I want to remind my fellow colleagues, we sent a budgetary recommendation to the Executive's office saying not only we don't want you to spend more than you get in, we want you to increase the unappropriated fund, I believe, 1%. We didn't account for expenditures for a new jail in that recommendation that we had sent to them. So yes, there are other priorities. I would agree, roads, education, minimum wage, with every one of those attributes. What we have done is given the voters of Macomb County the opportunity to express their wishes. And be prepared, as our fellow colleague down here on the end has indicated on numerous occasions, this goes down, we have a lot of work to do on our hands. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Sauger.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I worked in that jail. I know what it's like. It's getting older, and we're running out of Band-Aids on it right now. Some way, somehow, we got to do something with that. If not, you're going to start seeing floors being closed and inmates left out on the street. It's happened before. I congratulate those commissioners who voted for this. It's nothing out of your pocket. It's just giving, like Commissioner Hawes said, giving the public a chance to vote. Yes, we want it, no, we don't want it. But please, just don't go out on the street now and start bad-mouthing this thing that we should never approve this because we're letting Joe Public do that, not us. Thank you.
Commissioner Drollet?
Let me start the bashing that Marv just asked us not to do.
You would expect nothing less.
Thank you. So I appreciate the fact that everybody here who's spoken so far wants to let the public have a choice in making this decision. And I would hope that that same spirit would be extended if somebody proposes a tax cut, that we put that on the ballot, let the public choice, public decide. But that, for some odd reason, never seems to happen. The only time we want to give the public a choice is when it's going to raise their taxes. We never give them the choice, do you want to lower your taxes? I would also suggest we might look to see on the ballot an alternative proposal to this jail proposal that would wait till bonds expire and build a new jail out with no additional tax revenue. We just have to wait a little further. That doesn't make it to the ballot either. It's always the tax hike that makes it to the ballot. And everyone's in favor of letting the public decide, as long as there's an option to get more, and never if we risk getting less. So I think that I didn't intend to speak today. I know a lot of other people, I thought everything has been said, that it's going to be said on this, and now I realize the decision's been made and we're moving forward. But I do appreciate the spirit of everybody on the board acknowledging that no matter what the outcome of the vote, we're going to have some work to do. And if the public does reject this, it does make our job harder, and we have to be willing to embrace it. And I appreciate Commissioner Hawes' acknowledgement that we do expect prudent budgeting where money is set aside and we can build our additional funds. But there's budgets out there that are more important to me than this county's budget. More important than any goal we set with our county budget. And that's the budgets of the people we represent. Their household budgets, their incomes, how their families are making it through their economic time. So let's always remember the budgets of our constituents should be our top priority when we think about budgeting. Thank you.
Commissioner Kleinfeld?
Just what I would hate would be that if this doesn't pass, and it'll be 25 years before we have enough bonds to expire to cover it, if not more. I don't know how long it would be, but more importantly, the concern about the lawsuits that would be mounting in the near future if we don't attempt to do something. I'm not going to be confrontational on this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Kleinfeld. It's funny, and this is kind of like the annex thing. You see both sides of this, right? I mean, we need something done for this jail. I don't think anybody disagrees with that. Were we going to come to something that was what we thought was maybe a little different in Leon's realm of looking at retiring bonds? Were we going to look at the 2017 recommendation that we go to central intake and diversion services first, because the trend is to lower the number of jail beds, not increase them? We weren't getting back to that. I mean, I know that. So, like I said again, I put this on for the voters to see what's going on here, and they'll make up their own mind based on their own budget, and that's the nice thing about it. They have the opportunity to base it on their own budget. Can I afford this or can't I afford this? Will I pick the jail over education, or will I pick the jail over a number of other things out there? So you're right, Commissioner Drollet, we don't put on tax cuts on the ballot, and I'm sure that you'll be discussing that in the future with us. So I just want to point out that I believe that anything that this large should be at least looked at by the public. And that's the end of this for this conversation. And my next question just comes down to next week. We have 2 meetings next week, Wednesday, and we have a single meeting on Wednesday, and we have a multiple meeting on Thursday. Wednesdays does not have an awful lot of things on them. Just want to I want to throw it out there to see if we would rather come Thursday for longer, and instead of coming both days, but just rest assured that it's going to be a longer meeting. And on that note, Commissioner Carabelli and I and Brown will be in Washington, so we won't be here for that real long meeting. So thank you. We'll change that. I don't have any other new business. Any other commissioners with new business? Yeah, Commissioner Mac, Chair.
Rob's had
President.
a tough couple of,
Yes,
tough month
I'm sorry.
anyway. Just want to let you know, all of our hearts are with you, and we love you.
Yeah, Rob, I apologize for not bringing that up. Commissioner Sauger, or one of the commissioners asked, we had a moment of silence yesterday for that. Commissioner Myjack, I'm sorry. So
Thank you.
Yeah, we're
Thank you
sorry.
very much.
Sorry for your loss. Public participation?
Quick question, did we decide to lengthen Thursday meeting?
I saw a bunch of this. Oh, easy.
All right, I've prepared my statement on here.
Hello there.
Hello, my name is Mike Zubis. I live on 221 Cass Avenue. I wanted to, I have a proposal I prepared about the smart bus system and the RTA stuff, and I'm gonna, I'm getting text messages right after this. I'm gonna bounce out of here. Anyway, so
are we.
my proposal for how we should do mass transit within the Metro Detroit area. I will start now. What are our options, you may ask? Well, first, there's the status quo with SMART. Am I mad that we have mass transit? No. I am mad that we use outdated systems to fund and utilize our mass transit. Now, what alternatives could you possibly have? I'm sure would be one of many questions coming into everyone's mind right now. And I have my answer, MARTA. Yes, Metro Atlanta's RTA system. How could I have found out? I asked myself this when coming up with the situation and writing down this stuff. And now it becomes story time. In the past New Year, I visited my family, most who currently reside in the city of Atlanta. When I arrived via airplane, first time I ever flew, by the way, my pops picked me up after fighting my way through baggage claim, as it was a 2-hour escapade. After that, I asked him where his car was, and he said it was in Doraville, 45 minutes away. I asked him, how are we going to get there? With the MARTA train, he replied. And understanding that now, I get to see what I wanted to see for the city of Detroit and Metro. And it was something amazing. Going all the way up and through downtown Atlanta was great, especially not having to worry about driving laws and responsibilities being on the heavy rails that they have there. And after we got there, I found out that there are not one, but 2 parking garages, one for public use and one for the company AT&T, being a large employer in the Atlanta area. A much more prudent solution than using 40% of downtown Detroit as parking lots and garages, as reported recently in the FREEP, or Free Press. There is a YouTube video, I must mention, MARTA produced a few years ago in the station. It's about 5 minutes long. If you want to find it, just YouTube MARTA Doraville Station, and you will see the station that I ended up at. Now, how does that relate to us here today? Well, everything, really. The RTA system over there in Metro Atlanta is exactly what Detroit needs to change in order to have a 21st century region. The age of the motor vehicle in every garage is fading, as the new generation wants less congestive ways to travel to work, /school, /night out drinking, /ride to, let's say, Jimmy John's Field out there in Utica from here in Mount Clemens. I noticed that the RTA updated their master plan back in July. It looks great. It looks really nice. It easily and plainly explains how we utilize the funding that we would get from the state and the federal government, and if brought to the ballots through each county, all 4 counties respectively. That's where we differ from Georgia. You see, their state does not fund MARTA. It's all based off of the secret here, which they use a 1% sales tax, but then lower their normal sales tax to 5% in the Metro Atlanta area, still making it a 6% sales tax. So using the 20-year bond that you would use with the RTA over the 4-year SMART actually leaves SMART out of the federal funding that the RTA would get. Now, this begs one final question. How do we vote for this? Exactly like how Pontiac did when they gave options for medical cannabis. They gave 3 options. One was 20 centers, unlimited everything else, which won out. 2 was for facilities, 1 with other classes, and 3 was opting out. For this election, 1 would be the RTA plus local control by the county, such as the Macomb Department of Transportation, similar to Detroit and Wayne County. And 2 would just be local county by county, like how Cobb County does their system, where they just have a connector going from MARTA into there, and Cobb County runs the system without MARTA's assistance. Or 3, saying was smart. Oh, it scrolled up on me, sorry.
Excuse me, you have about 30
I'm
seconds.
almost, just one last part here.
All right, thanks.
Now, geez, of course I lost my part. Now, the conclusion is if all 4 counties voted yes on this proposal, the region will benefit greatly in a short amount of time. One major way would be to take Gratiot Avenue and make a bus lane, so that way buses wouldn't damage the road as much. Look at how Gratiot looks on the right lane compared to the left lanes. And thoughts on Uber and Lyft real quick. It would make a lot more sense for Uber to spend less, for somebody to get less than $10 on an Uber ride to the bus than spending $20+ going all the way to Detroit and back. It's a symbiotic relationship, or at least it could be, I believe. And the last thing I should say, and I'm gonna get out of here, everybody should try a fact-finding mission to the city of Atlanta to figure out how this would work. One group of people can take a car and travel by car the entire time, and the other group can fly in and take a transit system entirely, nothing but transit and Uber. That's pretty much all I have to say.
Great.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna get out of here.
It's been a long meeting for you. Any other members of the public wishing to speak? Any other members of the public wishing to speak? Seeing none, we're going to close public I know, I thought you wanted to speak. We're going to close public participation. We have a motion to adjourn by Commissioner Douget, supported by Commissioner Drollet. Please vote. Meeting adjourned.